in the meantime, what is life like in the rest of Kabul at 10 days after the Taliban seized control? Well, our senior reporter Catherine Norris-Trent is one of the very few Western journalists currently in the city, and we can speak to her now. Catherine, I know you've been talking to some women in Kabul who've been talking to you a bit about their fears of living under Taliban rule once again. What are you hearing?
Hi there, Nadia. Yesterday I went to meet some women who are in hiding and have been ever since the Taliban took Kabul. They've only been out, they told me, once or twice to buy food, but completely afraid while stepping outside. I spoke to one young woman who's moved the place she's living several times, staying with different relatives, very nervous about being tracked down. Women's rights activists among those who feel the most vulnerable right now. And you know, a lot of them are feeling not only scared, but extremely disappointed, extremely sad, almost in mourning. One young woman who was a student at Kabul University told me that basically all her hopes and ambitions had been buried in a grave, and very emotional as she was talking to us, saying that now she hoped to get out of the country, but she didn't yet have any idea how she was going to start the visa process. And of course, you know, those without papers at this stage could be in for a long, if not an impossible wait. So, you know, there have been fewer women on the streets of Kabul than in normal times. Many of them are sheltering at homes, just waiting to see what Taliban rule will mean for them as life goes forward in Afghanistan.
Meanwhile, Catherine, let's talk a bit more about the situation at the airport that you're touching on there. We've seen those harrowing scenes of people desperate to get out. From what you're seeing, is there any sign at the moment in that let-up, in the sheer number of people who are trying to get out?
No, there are still huge crowds coming to Kabul airport. The Taliban has been trying to push them away. Their fighters, you know, repeatedly firing into the air, hitting people with sticks and whips, trying to push them away. But they're still there. They're still massing around the airport. And people who say they have got paperwork, they have got exit permits and visas, Afghan nationals say that they're finding it impossible to get through. Now, in theory, foreign nationals are allowed to get through, but even that's a very difficult task indeed, because the airport is pretty much surrounded. So some countries have been laying on buses and escorts to try and get them through. But even those people in that most fortunate situation, if you like, it's all relative, of course, are finding themselves waiting for hours, if not more than that, in very difficult conditions. And security, clearly a huge concern as night falls as well. In the centre of town, we've also seen people, you know, crowding around anywhere they think that they might get permission to be taken to the airport and then abroad. And, you know, the Taliban repeatedly trying to push them away from these areas, trying not to get people clogging the streets, but people are getting ever more desperate now.
Catherine Norris-Trent in Kabul, thank you very much indeed.